Well, as we do with most of these lectures that involve problem solving, we like to throw in a few problems at the end and help work through them to kind of give you an example of what you can expect to see, as well as to kind of help you guide you through how we might work some problems. So we've talked about some of these sex-related modes of inheritance, and so let's try a couple of problems with that. All right, so here's one. We've got a plumage color, the feather color in chickens is controlled by a sex-linked gene. Okay, so we're dealing with sex linkage, so we already know the mode of inheritance. We're told that there's a dominant allele here that's, get a highlighter going. We've got a dominant allele at this locus, and we're going to call it G. You call it anything you want, but we chose to call it G. It produces silver plumage. Okay, that's dominant. And the expression of the recessive is little g results in gold. So here's a silver plume chicken right here. And then over here is one that's got the gold type coloration that would have. All right. Okay. Now let's set the problem up. And the problem says identify the phenotypes and genotypes of the progeny predicted to result from the mating of a gold plumed rooster with a silver plumed hen. All right. So what is this? Immediately, it's a top-down problem, right? You're given some parentals, you're given A and B, and you want to know what C is going to be, all right? Okay, so let's set it up. We just write down the given. We've got a gold male, it says. The rooster is a male, obviously, and hen is the female, so we've got a silver female. All right. Now, immediately, if I give this type of problem out on a face-to-face, a hand will come up and then they'll say, I'm working on this problem, and the silver female, because she's silver and has this big G, can I assume that she's homozygous? And that's quite a logical assumption, right? Because when you're working most of these genetics problems that we've been doing, it always says start out assuming homozygosity in parentals. And if that doesn't work out, then you go to something else, het. But is that what I want to do? Unfortunately, in this case, I'll say, well, you can assume that, maybe you need to think about it. Why did I say that? Well, because these are chickens, right? And they're birds. And what do we know about birds and chickens and moths and some other things? Well, we know that they have the reverse system. They still have the ligase mode of sex determination, the two different chromosomes. So they have, some sex determining chromosome. In mammals, there would be two X's would make you a female. If you have an X and a Y, you become a male. Well, but these are birds, and so they have the reverse system, right? They have the Z system, ZZZW. So in this case, in birds, the female is the heterogametic individual she has form, and the males are the homogametic form. So females are heterogametic and hemizygous. So we're going to bring those terms back. All right, so there is no homozygosity in a female, right? You can't be homozygous because she's hemizygous. So if we sit down and do this, we think, well, okay, what we really have now is a ZZZW system. Something that looks like this. Okay, and you can write it if you want to with little g's like I'm going to do right here. Some people, just like we did with x's and x and y's, a lot of times people like to put the alleles on the x's and everything's fine. You can do it that way, or you can just do whichever way you want to do it. Okay, the female though only gets one allele, right? At least of the coloring allele. She's got this sex determining chromosome, okay, Z, and then she's got this little other one like, here that doesn't really have any relation to it. She's hemizygous, okay? Now, what you don't want to do, very carefully, what you don't want to do here, get this to come up, is you don't want to put down Z, if I can get it to right, all right. You don't want to put down the ZZ little g as a dihybrid, okay? I didn't get it to right, but you don't want to do that. Right? Be careful. This is a dihybrid problem, but it's sex linked. So you're really dealing with sex and linkage, but at the same time. So don't get confused and try to make it into a full dihybrid problem with two loci. All right. Now, what I would do is say, okay, it's a fairly simple. Now that I've got it written out, it's fairly trivial. Here's the female. She's GW. That gets her part. If we do a Punnett square here, just to show you, the male is going to give you GG. So all of them that come down from that have, from her, will receive a big G, right? Which is we would call the silver. and from all the daughters are going to get this W, this female, this gene, right? From dad, all they can get are little g's, right? So as far as the production of male progeny of more roosters, you're only going to get heterozygous big G, little g, so they're all going to be silver. And for the females, you're going to get little g W, right? Because dad's giving the controlling system here, right? So the answer to this is this. You get one silver individual for every one gold, and very specifically, the silvers are going to be males and the golds are going to be females, right? This is classic crisscross. This is a case where dad, which is gold, made all the daughters gold, and where mom, who was a dominant silver, made all the sons silver. So it's a classic crisscross that we see not in every sex-linked cross, but in many, many of them, okay? So there are a lot of terms here, things you've got to think about. This is where we pull those things together, you know. If you go out and just memorize what ligase is or memorize what hemizygous is without putting it in context, it makes it very difficult. And that's what the main reason we actually have you work these problems is so you can see it in action, okay? All right, let's try another one, all right? It says the presence of horns in Dorset sheep is due to a locus where the horns are dominant in males and recessive in females. Polled individuals, that's without horns, that's not really a Dorset sheep, but we'll call it polled. Okay, it doesn't have horns, and certainly a male. And here's one with the horns, okay? So this is the presence of horns is due to a situation where you've got dominance in males and recessiveness in the females. And then they set up a cross where you've got polled males or mated to horned females, okay? Something like that. All right, now look at this part. This is the critical part that's been underlined here. Okay? What's the mode of inheritance? Anytime you have dominant in one and recessive in the other, doesn't matter which way it works, what have we got? Okay, apparently horns can occur in both males and females, so it's not sex limited. Okay, it doesn't say anything about it being sex linked, although you could try to work it that way. But this is classic signature. Dominant in one sex, recessive in the other is sex influenced. This is a sex influenced trait. It's an autosomal trait. Everybody's going to get two alleles, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at those two alleles in relation to the sex of that individual to determine how we're going to express it. Now, anytime we have one of these sex influence problems, even me, I'll do a chart. My brain just flips on it, so I'll just go, okay, I'm going to make a chart up, okay? And the chart is I need a male and female because I got to keep it separate. And then I need some alleles, right? Well, I don't know, you can use whatever alleles you want, but I usually use alleles that relate to the trait. So horns, maybe a big H, and polled, maybe a big P or something, or a little p. Doesn't matter, whatever you want to use. You can use big A and little a, but when you do that, your brain sees those little a's as recessive and the big ones as dominant, and that doesn't work well here all the time. So I tend to use something else. So in our case, we're going to use the H's. So, all right. Now, what happens here? Remember, it's autosomal. You get one copy from mom, one copy from dad. It's not sex linked. We don't get half a copy or anything else. We get two copies, just like a classic Mendelian trait. Right? Well, if on what you got from dad, you got horned, and what you got from mom, you got horns, there's nothing you can be but horned, okay? So both males and females are horned. Same thing for polled. If your mom gives you a polled allele and your dad gives you a polled allele, you're going to be polled, okay? It's just like being blonde and blonde, you're going to be blonde, right? Okay, where we get an interesting one is here in the middle. This is what makes it sex influenced. It says it's dominant in males. Horned is dominant, okay? So if you are a heterozygote and have big H and you happen to be male, you're going to get horns. If you are a female, then the pole is the one that works, right? It's recessive in female. The only way you can be a horned female is to get two horned alleles. In the heterozygous condition, you're polled. Polled takes over. So it's flip-flopped over like this, okay? That's the way it works. Now, that's just, I'm your poster child for this. This is just baldness, right? This would be big B, so that'd be bald, bald, and then hets, males are bald, females are not bald, they're normal, okay? And then down here, both of us are normal, okay, or hairy, or whatever you want to use, right? Okay, now, here's something that people do that messes it up all the time. I don't know why people try to do this, but they will, and it's one of the reasons I don't like using big A's and little a's for this. They'll take this horned right here for the female and this polled, and they'll flip them. They'll put polled up here and horn down there for some reason. No, that's not the way it works. Look at the alleles. Think about the genetics. This is giving you a horned piece of information. That's giving you horned. You can't be polled given those two pieces of information. Only the hets you have to worry about. All right. Well, now that we've got that, it's a trivial problem. Okay. Polled males are mated to horned females. Okay. Well, there's a polled male right there, right? And there's a horned female right there. That's the only genotype she can have. So we just put that down. Okay. We say, all right, we've got that. We've got them played out. What you're going to cross a homozygote times a homozygote. Everybody's going to be a het, and you're going to get about what? One het half. Now, what you have to be careful about here, though, is you look, and if you're a female, you're going to be one kind of phenotype. If you're a male, you're going to be another phenotype for that same genotype. So you have to think about that. Okay. So these guys are going to be horned males. These are going to be horned females. So what's the fraction of the progeny that are going to be horned looks like 1/2, and very specifically, they're going to be females, right? Okay. So it's a simple problem. Now, it's a problem where you have to know the mode of inheritance, and you have to think about these signatures of modes of inheritance, okay? Without that, you're just playing around. If you try to do it as a sex-linked, you can kind of get an answer, but it's not going to be 1/2, okay? It's going to give you something else because it has to crisscross over, right? Okay. All right, so let's try one more here. Presence of tusk is governed by a holandric gene in certain species of mammals. All right, so that first sentence is important. It's got two big things in there, okay? One, we're telling you we're in a mammal, right? So you need to think about, okay, I'm in the ligase mode of XX and XY, okay? And I've got this word right here, holandric. So really, this is a vocabulary problem, right? What does the word holandric mean? And sure enough, if I were in face-to-face, hand would go up, and so I'd say, what's this word mean right here? I don't recognize the word. I said, well, apparently you didn't listen to the video or you didn't go to lecture. We discussed it, okay? Holandric means that it's carried on the Y. Okay? It's transmitted from father to son on the Y. And there are quite a few genes that are carried on the Y. Even though the Y is a little tiny chromosome compared to the X, one of the largest ones, it's still got quite a bit of stuff on it, okay? So it's holandric, all right? So when a tusk male is mated with non-tusk females among 100 progeny, what would we expect? And we just 100 is just to make the math easy, okay? It could be 60 or 200 or whatever, all right? Be specific. Now, when you see that, that means you better start thinking he means something besides just a number, okay? Maybe he wants to know exactly how many Tuscans are going to be male or how many Tuscans are going to be tall or something. Okay, in this case, it's how many are going to be male or female. All right, so let's think about it. We've got a tusked male and a non-tusked female, okay, because females can't be tusked anyway, right? Okay, so where are we doing? Well, it's pretty easy. We only got one allele to worry about, this tusked allele right over here, and that's carried on the Y. We don't care what's on the X. It could be making them purple or green or hairy or not ever. We're not worried about the X. We're worried about the Y, okay? Females don't get any Ys, so they don't worry about having the tusked allele. Now you got a simple little problem, right? You just got all these little problems where you're producing this, okay? Because you could get an X from dad and an X from mom, just like any sex cross that we do, okay? Or you could get an X from mom and a Y from dad. If you get that Y, you carry down the tusked allele, and so therefore you're going to be individuals that are tusked, okay? You're going to be males and you're going to have tusks. All the males, all the sons end up being tusked in this particular group, okay? All right, so these are tusked males, these are tusked females, and among of progeny, how many you're going to expect to be specific, okay? I'd expect exactly 50% of them to be non-tusk, those will be females, and 50% of them to be tusk, and those will be males, all right? All right, so vocabulary problem. So with these three problems, you see how we take these ideas and we filter them in and give you enough clues to figure out the answer. And once you think through it, it's not too bad, okay? Remember birds, birds, chickens are birds, and as penguins are birds and all sorts of things are birds. I like to ask that. These questions about sex influence, I like to ask those because they really make you think about what it means to be dominant and recessive, just like lethals do, right? As we talk about it, it's you really have to think through what it means to be dominant. It doesn't mean you just, you know, that you're a big A. It could be that you're two little A's or something, or one big little A. It just means that when you have one of them, that takes over whatever the other allele is. All right. Now, last thing to say is remember, with these sex-related modes of inheritance, there were three that we really looked at. Okay. 2 of them are autosomal. Sex limited, okay, that's an easy one. Okay, it means just one sex gets it or the other. You know, we used all sorts of examples for that. Plumage in birds, development of lactation in mammals and able to produce milk only occurs in one sex, even though we all have the genes for it. Testes only occur in one sex versus the other, even though we have the genes for that, that are carried autosomally. It takes 2 alleles, they work, okay? But that one's easy, okay? Sex limited. The second one is that's autosomal is sex influence. We just did that problem, okay? Sex influence is one of those where it's going to be dominant in one sex and recessive in the other, but both get it, okay? Unlike sex limited, where only one sex has the phenotype, sex influence, they both get it, but their sex determines how they express it. And then way off besides that is sex linkage and all the things that relate to sex linkage. Being homogametic, being heterogametic, being hemizygous, whether you are proteiner mode or ligase mode or whatever, all those things that relate into sex linkage. So you need to be able to take those 3 different modes of inheritance and be able to work through them to get this, okay? All right, so that finishes up our basic discussion about sex linkage. Go work a few problems that relate to sex linkage, sex influence, etc. There's some in the book and there's plenty on the web that you can work with.